When we talk about God's love and protection, we are diving into some of the most powerful and comforting aspects of faith. For millions around the world, the idea that God offers unshakable love and constant protection isn't just a theological concept, it's a source of deep solace and strength, especially in the face of life's greatest challenges. But what exactly does this mean, and where does this belief come from? Let's take a closer look. At the heart of this belief is the understanding that God's love and protection are not reserved for a select few, they are available to all believers. The idea that God watches over each of us, offering care and guarding us through every season of life, is a central theme in many religious traditions, particularly Christianity. It suggests that no matter what we face, whether it's fear, grief, or uncertainty, God's love is a constant presence, providing us with unwavering support. One of the most powerful expressions of this divine assurance can be found in the beloved Psalm 23:1-4. These verses are familiar to many, but their depth continues to resonate with anyone who's ever walked through a time of struggle. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. This passage encapsulates God's promise of protection, providing not just spiritual refuge, but a sense of profound security. The metaphor of God as the shepherd, tender, attentive, and protective, conveys a clear message. No matter how dark or dangerous the road ahead may seem, God is there, walking alongside us. His presence is our shield, and His love is the source of our courage. It's a picture of peace and restoration, a reminder that even when life's path takes us through the deepest valleys, we are never truly alone. So, why does this assurance matter so much? It speaks to something deep within a human experience, the need for safety, for belonging, and for an anchor in a world that can often feel overwhelming. It's easy to feel lost, to be swept away by the storms of life, but the theology of God's protection offers something extraordinary. A divine promise that no matter the circumstances, God's care is unshakable. This isn't just about comfort in times of peace, it's about finding a strength that transcends the darkest moments. Theologically, this protection is grounded in the understanding of God's omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence. God is always present, always aware, and always capable. His protection is not limited by time, space, or human circumstance. Whether we are in moments of great joy or immense sorrow, God's love is unchanging. He sees our struggles, understands our fears, and is always ready to provide the help we need. This belief is reinforced by countless stories throughout the Bible. From the Old Testament to the New Testament, God's protection is a recurring theme. Whether it's the Israelites being led out of Egypt or Jesus calming the storm, these narratives consistently reinforce the truth that God's love is not a passive force but an active, life-changing presence. But there's more to God's love and protection than just security from harm. It's also about guidance and restoration. In the same psalm, We are told that God leads me beside still waters and restores my soul. This speaks to the restorative power of God's love. It's not just about protection in the face of danger, but about a holistic care for our well-being, physical, emotional, and spiritual. When we feel broken or weary, God's love is there to heal and restore, bringing us back to a place of peace and balance. At its core, the idea of God's love and protection is not just about avoiding pain, it's about finding strength and peace in the midst of it. It's about having the assurance that no matter what happens, we are held by a love that is beyond human understanding. And that's the essence of faith, a trust in something greater than ourselves, a belief that even when we can't see the way forward, we are not alone. As we reflect on these concepts, let us remember that God's love and protection are not just ideas or theological principles, they are life-changing realities. In a world that often feels uncertain, knowing that we are loved and protected by a divine force gives us the courage to face whatever challenges lie ahead. Whether we are standing on mountaintops or walking through the darkest valleys, God's love is a constant reminder that we are never beyond the reach of His grace. And that, in itself, is one of the greatest gifts we could ever receive. As we continue to explore the concept of God's love and protection, we must understand that this belief is not only rooted in comfort and assurance but also deeply supported by various theological theories that shed light on the ways God's love actively operates in our lives. These theories help us understand why and how God provides protection, and they offer us profound insights into His divine nature. One of the foundational theological concepts is the providence of God, which speaks to the belief that God is intimately involved in every aspect of creation. This theory holds that everything in life, from the grandest to the smallest events, is under God's sovereign control. It suggests that God has a purpose for every situation, and His providence ensures that His followers are guided and protected in ways we may not always understand. It's a reminder that even when we don't see the whole picture or when life seems chaotic, God is at work, orchestrating events for a greater good. Providence isn't just about God's involvement in the major moments of life, like protecting us from disaster, but also in the everyday occurrences that we might take for granted. The God who provides for our needs, who leads us down the right paths, and who guides us through challenges is the same God who sustains us in the quiet moments. This active presence of God in our lives can bring a profound sense of peace, knowing that nothing happens by accident, everything is part of His divine plan. His protection doesn't just shield us from harm, it leads us to places of growth and understanding, even in the midst of adversity. Closely related to the idea of providence is the theological concept of grace. Grace is one of the most beautiful aspects of Christian theology. It is often described as God's unmerited favor, His love and protection given freely, not because we deserve it, but because of His boundless love and mercy. Grace is not only about receiving forgiveness for our wrongdoings but also about God extending His protection to us, even when we fall short. It's the idea that, in our moments of weakness or failure, God still reaches out to us with love and mercy, offering a shield of protection when we feel unworthy or incapable of protecting ourselves. In terms of protection, grace is vital. It assures us that no matter how many mistakes we make or how far we may wander, God's grace will always surround us. It's through grace that we can rest assured in God's protection, knowing that His love for us doesn't depend on our perfection. This aspect of grace reminds us that God's love and protection aren't earned, they are freely given. When we fall, His grace picks us up. When we are weak, His grace strengthens us. Grace is the ultimate form of divine protection, constantly at work in our lives, even when we aren't consciously aware of it. Another key theological theory connected to God's love and protection is the role of prayer. In Christian tradition, prayer is seen not just as a form of communication with God, but as a vital means of seeking His divine protection and guidance. Through prayer, believers are able to directly connect with God, voicing their fears, hopes, and needs, and asking for His protection in times of danger. The act of praying for divine protection is not just about asking for physical safety but also about seeking peace in our hearts, strength for our spirits, and wisdom for our minds. The power of prayer lies in its ability to bring us into a closer relationship with God, allowing us to express our trust in His love and protection. It is in prayer that we acknowledge our dependence on God and submit ourselves to His will, knowing that His understanding surpasses ours and that He has the best plans for us. Prayer becomes a source of comfort, especially during times of uncertainty or fear, because it strengthens our faith and reminds us that God is always listening, always caring, and always ready to act on our behalf. In fact, many theologians argue that prayer is not just a way of asking for protection, it is also an opportunity for God to transform us, teaching us to rely on Him more fully and to trust in His plan for our lives. Together, these theories, providence, grace, and prayer, form the theological foundation of God's love and protection. They provide a comprehensive understanding of how God's protective hand works in our lives. God's providence assures us that nothing is beyond His control. His grace tells us that His love is unconditional and never dependent on our actions, and prayer connects us to God in a way that deepens our trust in His ability to protect and guide us. These theological concepts also emphasize that God's love and protection are not merely abstract ideas. They are living, breathing realities that influence every aspect of our lives. Whether we are in times of trial or triumph, God's love and protection are ever present, actively at work. His protection is not just physical, but spiritual and emotional, encompassing all aspects of our being. It is a love that shields, a grace that restores, and a protection that comforts. When we understand these theological theories, we begin to see that God's love and protection are not passive forces. They are dynamic, active, and deeply intertwined with our daily experiences. They work together to ensure that, no matter where life takes us, we are never alone. And in this truth, we find the courage to face the challenges that come our way, knowing that God's love and protection are a constant and unshakable reality, guiding us, shielding us, and giving us strength. In the end, it is through providence, grace, and prayer that we come to understand the true depth of God's love and protection. These are not just theological ideas, they are the lifeblood of our faith, giving us hope, strength, an assurance that no matter what comes our way, God is always with us. His love always surrounds us, and His protection is unbreakable. As comforting and reassuring as the idea of God's love and protection might be, it is not without its critics, especially when confronted with the harsh realities of life. Throughout history, theologians and religious thinkers have grappled with the tension between the belief in an all-loving, all-powerful God and the undeniable existence of suffering, pain, and evil in the world. One of the most enduring and difficult theological dilemmas is the problem of evil. It raises profound questions about the nature of God, particularly His love and power. If God is truly omnipotent, all-loving, and all-knowing, then why does evil exist? Why do innocent people suffer while the guilty often seem to prosper? Why do tragedies befall the righteous, and why are good people caught in the crossfire of natural disasters, illness, and injustice? These questions have left many theologians in deep contemplation for centuries. Some propose that God's love does not necessarily shield His followers from suffering. Instead, it is believed that God provides the strength, resilience, and grace needed to endure hardships. In this view, suffering is not an indication that God's love is absent. Rather, it is seen as an opportunity for spiritual growth, testing, and refinement. Suffering, from this perspective, serves as a way to deepen one's relationship with God, as it is in moments of hardship that believers may turn to Him for solace, understanding, and strength. There is also the perspective that human free will plays a pivotal role in the existence of suffering. Many religious scholars suggest that suffering is a direct consequence of human choices. The concept of free will, while granting humanity the freedom to choose good or evil, also opens the door to consequences both personal and societal. For instance, wars, social injustice, and environmental disasters may stem from human decisions that go against divine principles. According to this view, God's allowance of suffering is not a sign of abandonment or indifference but is part of His greater plan, one that respects human autonomy while still offering hope, redemption, and ultimately, protection through faith. On the other hand, some critics assert that God's protection, while a central theme in many religious teachings, is not guaranteed in every circumstance. While many believe that prayers for protection will always be answered in one form or another, others point out that not all prayers seem to yield the expected results. Why, for instance, do some people experience miraculous interventions, while others find themselves struggling through endless turmoil without apparent divine assistance? Does this mean that God is indifferent or unresponsive to human suffering? Or is there a deeper, perhaps unfathomable, purpose behind unanswered prayers? These questions challenge the idea of a protective God and highlight the complexity of understanding divine intervention. Some religious scholars argue that God's protection may not always manifest in the way we anticipate. Protection, in this context, is not necessarily about the avoidance of suffering but rather the provision of the strength to endure, the wisdom to understand, and the peace to face life's inevitable challenges. Perhaps God's protection is not always about shielding His followers from pain but about walking with them through it, offering comfort and hope in times of trial. At the heart of this theological debate is the question of faith. Does one continue to believe in God's love and protection when faced with the harshest trials of life? Can one reconcile the existence of suffering with the promise of divine love? Some suggest that faith is not found in the absence of pain but in the ability to trust that God is still present in the midst of it, even when His presence is not immediately felt. The notion of God's love and protection is complex, layered with paradoxes and questions that defy easy answers. While many cling to the belief that God's love is unconditional and that His protection is ever present, others find themselves questioning these beliefs in light of their personal experiences with suffering, tragedy, and unanswered prayers. This tension between divine love and the reality of suffering is not only a theological conundrum but a deeply personal struggle that many believers continue to face. In conclusion, while God's love and protection remain central tenets of many faiths, the way they are understood and experienced varies significantly. Some see them as absolute and unwavering, while others wrestle with the seeming contradictions between God's goodness and the reality of evil. Whether one embraces God's love as a source of strength in times of suffering or questions the nature of divine protection in the face of personal tragedy, the theological debate around these concepts remains a powerful and relevant discussion in the search for spiritual truth. In the midst of the theological debates and differing viewpoints on the nature of God's love and protection, one truth stands firm and clear in the Bible. God's love and protection are universally offered to all who believe, but they are not always experienced in the same way. It's a truth that resonates deeply for many people, but it doesn't always align with the ways we might expect God to show up in our lives. God's protection may not always appear in ways that satisfy our personal desires or meet our exact expectations. Yet, the Bible assures us that God's love is unshakable, His presence is unwavering, and His protection is ever present, even in the most difficult times. The profound nature of this promise is beautifully captured in the words of Romans 8:38-39, which offer us an unassailable reassurance of God's eternal love. For I am sure that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present nor things to come, nor powers, nor height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. These words encapsulate the essence of God's love and protection, an unyielding force that transcends all that we encounter. They provide a beacon of hope, reminding us that no matter the circumstances or the challenges we face, God's love remains steadfast. It's not simply a passive force that is experienced when life is easy or when everything aligns perfectly. It is a love that surrounds us in the midst of trials, hardships, and moments of deep vulnerability. It is a protective embrace that, even when we don't always feel its immediate effects, is always present. Consider how this message of divine love can be life-changing. In moments of adversity, it is easy to feel isolated, abandoned, or hopeless. Whether we are navigating personal struggles, health crises, or the loss of loved ones, the questions about God's protection often become more pressing. Why doesn't God intervene when we suffer? Why do bad things happen to good people? These are questions that many have asked throughout the centuries, and while answers might not always be easy to find, The reassurance of God's unfailing love provides a foundation to lean on. In times of darkness, God's love isn't merely a distant idea, it becomes a source of strength and resilience. The assurance that nothing, no trial, no misfortune, no failure can separate us from God's love becomes a source of hope that inspires perseverance. It is this hope that carries millions of believers through their most challenging moments. This understanding of God's protection isn't necessarily about being shielded from harm, but about having the courage and strength to face whatever comes our way, knowing that we are never truly alone. However, this biblical promise doesn't mean that life will be free from hardship. In fact, it's often in our most difficult moments that we truly begin to understand the depth of God's love. God's protection, rather than being a promise of a pain-free existence, is a promise of His unwavering presence in our pain. It's about having the confidence that, even when we don't have all the answers or when the world seems to be crumbling around us, God's love and protection are constant. His love is not something that can be taken away, even by the darkest moments we encounter. This understanding invites us to explore a deeper, more mature relationship with God, one that acknowledges the reality of suffering while also recognizing that God's presence provides a constant source of solace, guidance, and strength. We might not always see His protection in the way we expect or hope for, but the assurance of His love reminds us that He is with us, even in the hardest of times. It's essential to reflect on what this means for our everyday lives. The debate over God's protection is ongoing, and each person must reconcile these theological truths with their own experiences. But in the end, the message of God's love remains a powerful force in the lives of countless individuals across the world. Whether or not we understand why suffering exists, and whether or not we see immediate protection in the face of danger, the Bible assures us that nothing, no circumstance, no difficulty, no tragedy can separate us from the love of God. In conclusion, God's love is not conditional or limited by our circumstances. His protection may not always look the way we expect, but it is steadfast and never fails. The power of this message is transformative, offering believers hope, peace, and a deep sense of security in a world full of uncertainty. The assurance that God's love is unchanging, even in the face of trials, brings light to the darkest situations and provides the strength to persevere. It is this belief in God's everlasting love that continues to inspire and uplift millions, providing them with the courage to face whatever challenges life may bring, confident that nothing can separate them from the love of God in Christ Jesus.